The wind rose from the east and carried with it the scent of cold and distant fires. At Winterfell, beneath a sky darkening with the slow onset of autumn, Bran Stark dreamed. His world was a fog of green and gold and shifting shadows. The trees whispering in tongues older than men, and the faces in the bark seemed to turn toward him with sightless eyes. He felt them in his bones, the weight of secrets, the trembling threat that haunted the riverlands and the south. When he woke, he did not cry out. Instead, Bran lay still in the furs, listening to the slow breaths of his direwolf, Summer, curled at the foot of his bed. He remembered the feeling of falling, the rush of wind past his face, the cracking of bones and the darkness that followed. But now, every time he closed his eyes, the world twisted and bent in strange ways. Sometimes he flew. Sometimes he looked out from other eyes, other bodies, seeing things he could not have seen before. Most nights, he forgot the dreams by dawn. But not tonight. He had seen his father kneeling in a great chamber of stone, the sound of voices rising around him like a tide. He had seen the sly smile on Petyr Baelish's lips, had felt the sharp twist of betrayal. He had heard the scrape of steel and the words that would doom House Stark. He did not know how, but he knew it was real. More real than the snow outside, more real than the wolf's breath on his palm. Maester Luwin found him before the dawn bell. Huddled by the window, his face pale and pinched with worry. Bran told him the dream in a rush, words tumbling and half wild. Luwin's brow furrowed, and he smoothed the boy's hair with a gentle hand. But Bran saw the doubt behind his eyes. "Dreams are but dreams, Bran," the Maester said. "You mustn't trouble yourself over shadows." But Bran was stubborn, as all Starks were. When Robb came to break his fast, Bran told him too. Robb listened, frowning. But there was always something dismissive in the way Robb heard him now. He was Lord of Winterfell, in Father's absence, and carried the weight of too many cares. "I'll tell Father when he returns," Bran said. "I will. He must know about Lord Baelish." Robb clapped his shoulder, but he was already looking away. Bran waited, days passing in a blur of training yards and words whispered among the godswood. Then, at last, the Raven came, bearing news that Lord Eddard Stark was bound north from Moat Cailin, his party on the road. Catelyn was gone to the Eyrie. The castle was quieter than ever. Bran steeled himself, rehearsing the words in his mind as his father's banners streamed into the yard. Lord Eddard's hair was touched with gray, his face lined with the cares of a kingdom he did not want. But when he saw Bran, something in his gaze softened, and he knelt in the snow, arms open for his crippled son. Bran's voice broke as he told the dream again, as he described the faces and the words. The serpent's smile, the hand upon the hilt. His father listened, kneeling in the mud, the snow swirling around them. "What did you see, Bran?" Eddard's voice was gentle, but there was a sharpness beneath it. A fear he tried to hide. "A throne room, in King's Landing. You were kneeling. Lord Baelish was there, and there was blood. I heard him say not to trust anyone, not even him." Eddard was silent for a long while. Then he lifted Bran and carried him inside, calling for Maester Luwin and Robb. The men gathered in Ned's solar, firelight flickering against the stone. The dream was recounted once more, but now Ned's face was grave, his eyes fixed upon some distant memory. "Dreams can be warnings," Ned said at last, glancing at Luwin. "The old gods send them. Sometimes my own dreams saved me once, at the Tower of Joy. I would be a fool to ignore this one, given what's at stake in the south." Robb stood straighter. "What will you do, Father?" Eddard's hand trembled as he poured his wine. "I must go, as the king commands. But I will go with my eyes open and not alone. If there is danger in King's Landing, I will root it out." He looked at Bran, as if seeing him new. "Thank you, Bran. The gods speak to us in many ways." Then Berwyn. Bran felt something twist and settle inside him. A weight, but also a strange pride. Perhaps he was not useless after all. Perhaps the old gods had chosen him for this, crippled or not. Ned left for King's Landing a week later, accompanied not only by his household guard, but by Jory Castle, Tomard and Harwin. Men he trusted with his life. Sir Roderick Castle and Septa Mordain remained behind, but Ned's party was larger and warier than before. He sent riders to seek Caitlin, to bid her caution. He wrote letters to Stannis Baratheon and Renly, vague but warning, should the storm come. The road south was long, and the air grew warmer with every mile. The king's party was boisterous, laughing and drinking as they moved. But Lord Stark was quieter than ever. He watched Petyr Baelish carefully. The Master of Coin rode near Cersei, whispering sly jests. But his eyes flickered back to Ned, measuring. Ned's dreams were restless. He saw Bran's face, pale and earnest, the warning echoing in his mind. He watched Sansa and Arya, his daughters, both so young, so unready for the Game of Thrones. He rode to Winterfell every night, and rode with his sword never far from hand. King's Landing greeted them as a city always does, noisy, foul, brimming with life. The Red Keep rose above the city, and as Ned crossed the threshold, he felt the weight of 1,000 secrets pressing down upon him. Petyr Baelish met him in the halls with a smirk. "Lord Stark, I trust the journey was not too taxing. The South can be treacherous for those unaccustomed." Ned's gaze was cool. "I've weathered worse, Lord Baelish." Petyr's smile did not waver, but Ned saw the flicker of surprise in his eyes. The courtiers and counselors gathered in droves, each one eager to whisper in his ear, but Ned was patient. He watched and listened, remembering the dream, trusting no one save his own men. Varys came to him with riddles. Pycelle offered honeyed words and leeches. Cersei Lannister's gaze was cold as frost, and even Robert seemed wearied by the weight of his crown. But Ned waited, and in the shadows, he watched Petyr Baelish. When the time came to investigate Jon Arryn's death, Petyr offered his help. He led Ned through the city's labyrinth, pointing out allies and enemies with the air of a friend. But Ned, wary now, moved carefully. He sent Jory and Harwin to shadow Baelish's men. He spoke with Sir Barristan Selmy in private, trusting the old knight's honor. He visited Gendry the Smith in secret, keeping his discoveries close. At night he dreamed of wolves and crows, of the crypts beneath Winterfell, and of Bran's voice, warning him again. "You must not trust him, father. He is a snake." One night, after a council meeting, Baelish invited Ned to his chambers. Wine was poured, and soft music drifted from the courtyards below. "I hear you've been busy, my lord," Petyr said, reclining in a velvet chair, "investigating the late hand's affairs. Do be careful. King's Landing is not Winterfell. Loyalty is a coin often spent and never returned." Ned regarded him for a long moment. "And where do your loyalties lie, Lord Baelish?" Petyr grinned. "Why, with the realm, of course. With peace, prosperity, and gold." Ned's jaw tightened. "And if the realm were threatened by those closest to the throne?" Petyr's eyes flashed. "Then I would do my duty, as would you." The game was on, and both men knew it. Days passed. Ned uncovered more truths, the bastard children of Robert Baratheon, the secrets Jon Arryn had died for. He wrote to Stannis, urging caution and loyalty. He spoke with Renly, who watched him with wary eyes. Sansa and Arya grew restless, longing for the north. Sansa dreamed of songs and nights. Arya scowled and trained with her wooden sword, wary of every shadow. Ned kept them close, his guards closer. He told Sansa not to trust Petyr, nor the Queen, nor any of her companions. Arya nodded, and even Sansa for once did not argue. It was in the Godswood of the Red Keep that Varys found him, the spymaster's eyes solemn. "There are stirrings in the city, my lord," Varys whispered, whispers of plots and daggers drawn. "The Queen grows impatient, and Lord Baelish, well, Lord Baelish grows bold. You must tread carefully." Ned nodded. "I am aware. Tell me, who does Baelish truly serve?" "Menem Sawal." Varys' lips twitched. "Himself always, but he serves best when watched." And so Ned watched. He let Baelish think himself trusted, following his trail through brothels and counting houses, through whispers and half-truths. He uncovered the ledger with the gold for the city watch, found the guards who owed Baelish their posts. He saw how the web was spun. When Robert left for his hunt, Cersei pressed closer, her eyes bright with threat. "You are far from home, Lord Stark. Take care that you do not lose yourself in the game." "I am a Stark of Winterfell," Ned replied. "We do not forget." It was then, on a rain-slick morning, that Jory Castle found him, breathless. "My lord, I have seen something. Baelish met with Sir Mandon Moore last night, alone, and gold changed hands." Ned felt the cold settle in his bones. The dream was no longer a shadow. He summoned Jory, Tomard, and Harwin, bidding them keep watch upon the gates in the Queen's apartments. He sent word to Renly Baratheon and Sir Barristan, sharing what he knew, enough to sow doubt, to force their hands should the need arise. Petyr Baelish came to him at dusk, the sky bleeding red over the city. "My lord, I have arranged for you to speak with the commander of the city watch. Perhaps we can secure your safety, and your daughter's hand in time." Ned smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I thank you, Lord Baelish, but I have already spoken with Sir Barristan. I have no need of the city watch." Petyr's eyes narrowed. "You are cautious, Lord Stark. Perhaps too cautious." Ned met his gaze. Better cautious than a fool. The city seethed around them, secrets thick as the summer heat. Sansa wept for Joffrey's coldness. Arya vanished into the shadows, training with Syrio Forel. Ned watched and waited, letting Baelish move his pieces. But now, each time Baelish made an offer, Ned sent his own men to shadow him. It was not enough to prevent the storm, but it was enough to survive it. When Robert was killed by the boar, the court exploded into chaos. Cersei moved swiftly, seizing Tommen and Myrcella, summoning the gold cloaks to her cause. But Ned was ready. He had written his letters, called his banners. He gathered Renly and Sir Barristan, warning them of Baelish's double-dealing. On the night Baelish moved to seize Sansa and Arya, Ned was waiting. His men outnumbered the city watch, and the gold cloaks found their loyalty wavering when Ned revealed Baelish's bribes. A fight broke out in the halls, steel clashing against steel, curses echoing off stone. Sansa screamed, Arya vanished with Needle, and Baelish tried to flee. Ned caught him in the yard, Tomard's blade at his throat. "Why?" Ned demanded, his voice raw with anger and betrayal. "Why betray me? What have I ever done to you?" Baelish's smile was sad, almost fond. "You were always too honest for this world, Eddard. I warned you not to trust me." Ned's hand trembled, but he did not flinch. He ordered Baelish thrown into the black cells, his schemes undone. He summoned Renly and Sir Barristan, urging them to stand with him against the Lannisters. King's Landing was a city on the edge of war, but for the moment, House Stark was safe. Far to the north, Bran dreamed beneath the heart tree, and the old gods whispered in the wind. The world was changing. The wolves would not be driven so easily from their den, not this time. Yet the Game of Thrones was never so simple. The city boiled with vengeance, and Cersei Lannister was not one to forgive an insult. As Ned prepared his daughters for flight, as the banners of the North were called, he knew the storm was far from over. But for now, the warning had been heeded. The betrayal had failed, and the Starks endured as they always had, cold and silent and unbroken in the heart of the world. Ka. Rain fell across King's Landing as if the city itself wept, streaming down slate rooftops and gilded domes, turning the narrow streets to muddy rivers, choked with the filth of 10,000 souls. In the Red Keep, candles guttered in every corridor, and the long halls rang with the hurried tread of armored feet. The city seethed, on the verge of something vast and uncontainable. And Ned Stark felt the weight of it with every step he took, a cold knot pressing into his chest. He had not slept, not truly, since Petyr Baelish's arrest. Jory Castle stood guard by the door, always watchful, and Harwin had not left Arya's side. Sansa wept each night for her lost dreams, for the prince who would not come, and the queen who watched her with flat green eyes, sharp as broken glass. Ned met with Sir Barristan Selmy and Lord Renly behind closed doors, away from the prying ears of Varys and the queen's spies. The old knight was grave, lips pressed thin, the lines of age drawn deep about his eyes. "They will not forget this." Sir Barristan murmured, after the day's council session had ended in shouts and threats. The Queen. Her father in the west. You have made powerful enemies, Lord Stark. Ned rested his hand on the pommel of ice, the great sword never far from reach. I did not come to King's Landing seeking enemies, Sir Barristan. But I will not sit idly by as they conspire to kill the King's hand and seize my daughters. Maine. Renly Baratheon, younger and more restless than ever, drummed his fingers on the tabletop. Baelish has allies still. The city watch is split. Some are loyal to you, some to the Queen, and some to their purses. If Cersei decides to move, there will be blood in the streets before dawn. Jory brought word from the streets, talk of riot and unrest, of gold cloaks taking coin from both Lannister and Stark, of the Queen's men watching the gates. The spider's little birds were everywhere, but Varys himself came only seldom now, drifting through the halls like a wraith, eyes always darting, fingers steepled. That evening, as Ned sat with Sansa and Arya in his solar, thunder grumbled above the city. Sansa's eyes were rimmed red, her hands twisting in her lap. Arya had needle across her knees, glaring out at the rain-smeared window. Father, when can we go home? Sansa whispered, her voice thin and lost. Soon, little dove. Ned reached to squeeze her hand, but she flinched as if he were a stranger. Arya's jaw set stubbornly. We should go now. You said the gold cloaks might turn. If they do, I'll fight. She touched the hilt of her sword, defiant and brave, and so heartbreakingly small. You will do as you are told, Ned said, gentler than he felt. Both of you. When the time comes, Harwin and Jory will get you out, by the postern gate. I have sent word to the Black Brothers at the wall. Should you be separated, make for the inn by the mud gate and wait for my men. Sansa sniffled. Arya only nodded, eyes bright with unshed tears. Night crept over the city, shadows swallowing every promise of peace. Ned penned letters in the dark, sending ravens north and west, warnings to Robb, to Catelyn at the Eyrie, to Stannis and the Blackfish at River Run. He made plans, and then plans for the failure of those plans. But as the wind howled outside and lightning clawed the sky, he could not shake the sense of doom. He dreamed of Bran, standing by the heart tree, face pale and shining with rain, calling to him across leagues and years. Don't trust him, father. Don't trust the Lannisters. Don't trust anyone. He woke sweating, sword drawn and the room empty but for the dying coals in the brazier. Morning brought worse tidings. Tamard came to him at dawn, dragging a shivering boy and motley behind him. A street urchin with hair like old straw, eyes darting in fear. Lord, this one was listening by the kitchens. Claims he's got news for you. Ned knelt, softening his voice. What is it, boy? The urchin trembled, clutching his cap in both hands. They're saying in Flea Bottom, Lord, the Queen's called for her kin, Sir Jaime, and more besides. Gold cloaks marching in the night. There's men at the docks asking after your men, sir. And the Queen's. She's promised silver to any who will bring her news of your girls. Ned pressed a silver stag into the boy's hand. Thank you. Stay out of sight, Tamard. See him fed. His heart hammered as he turned back to the window. The city was closing around them like a trap. He sent Jory and Harwin to ready the horses, to count the gold in the strongbox, to set guards on the stables and the servants. He wrote a last note to Winterfell. If this letter finds you, I am likely dead. Trust no one but the North. At noon, word reached him that Sir Jaime Lannister had ridden in from the west, red-cloaked and smiling, with 100 swords at his back. The Lion of Lannister swept into the Red Keep, answering only to the Queen. The city grew feverish with the news, tensions rising, tempers short. Renly came to him then, grave and uncertain. My brother's death was no hunting accident, he said softly when they met alone. You know this, and so does Cersei. She means to crown Joffrey, tonight, perhaps. If you will move, move now. Ned stared at the Baratheon stag on the younger man's surcoat, the weight of choice pressing on him. You would take the throne from your nephew? Joffrey is no Baratheon, Renly replied, voice low. And you know it. I have men who will stand with me. If you declare for me, we can end this bloodlessly. But if you hesitate, Ned remembered Bran's dream. Remembered the words, betrayal, blood, the knife at the throat. I cannot take the crown, he said quietly. It is not mine. Renly looked at him for a long moment. Then may the gods have mercy on us all. The city watch was uneasy. Baelish's influence still lingered, and the gold cloaks waited, hands never far from their swords. Jory Castle rode through the streets, marking the banners that flew from windows. Lannister crimson, Baratheon gold, and in a few hidden corners, the direwolf of Stark. That night, as the city gathered for the king's funeral feast, Ned readied his daughters for flight. Sansa sobbed, clinging to her dreams. Arya watched everything, silent as a cat. Harwin strapped a dagger to Arya's thigh, meeting her gaze with a nod. Jory kissed Sansa's brow, promising to keep her safe. Ned's men gathered in the yard, grim and determined. The Red Keep stones sweated with the threat of violence. The feast in the great hall was loud and raucous. The new king, a boy with a golden mane and a cruel smile, sat beside his mother, the crown glinting on his brow. Cersei watched Ned with cold satisfaction, but Ser Barristan stood beside him, silent as a statue. When the hour came, Ned slipped from the hall, his men falling in behind him. The corridors twisted with laughter and torchlight, but outside the queen's apartments, Jaime Lannister waited. So it comes to this, the Kingslayer drawled, hand on his sword. Stark and Lannister, Wolf and Lion. You're not leaving with the girls. Ned squared his shoulders, ice in his grip. Stand aside, Sir Jaime. Jaime's smile was thin. I could, but I won't. The first blow rang loud as a church bell. Swords flashed, gold and steel in the torchlight. Harwin went down with a cry, blood pouring from a gash in his side. Jory drove Jaime back, his sword dancing. Tamard pulled Arya behind him, shielding her with his bulk. Sansa shrieked, cowering against the wall. Jaime fought with terrible grace, parrying Jory's strikes and slipping past Ned's guard. You should have stayed in the north, Stark. You don't belong here. Ned met him. Blow for blow, the greatsword heavy but sure. The corridor filled with the clang of steel and the shouts of men. Down the hall, gold cloaks surged forward, answering the queen's call. Take the girls, Ned bellowed. Get them out, by the postern gate. Jory seized Arya, dragging her down a side passage. Tamar gathered Sansa, pressing a dagger into her shaking hands. Jaime pressed harder, blade darting. You've lost, Stark. You're alone here. Berin? I have never been alone, Ned spat, and forced Jaime back with a sweeping blow. But the numbers told. The gold cloaks crashed into his men, cutting down Ser Vardis and old Desmond, forcing Ned to retreat. He saw Tamar go down, Sansa's scream echoing. Arya vanished, slipping through a hidden door as Jory shielded her. Then, Ser Mandon Moore appeared, his white cloak red with blood. In the name of King Joffrey, yield. Ned staggered, blood running from a shallow cut on his brow. Jaime circled him, sword raised. For a moment, the world froze. I yield, Ned said, voice raw. But let my daughters go. Jaime glanced at the king's guard, then back at Ned. That is not my call. The gold cloaks seized him, wrenching ice from his hands. Sansa was dragged away, screaming for her father. Arya was gone, lost in the chaos. Ned was taken to the black cells beneath the Red Keep. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the drip of water and the distant clang of doors. He waited in silence, rage and despair warring within him. He thought of Catelyn, of Robb and Bran, of Rickon, and Jon Snow at the Wall. Most of all, he thought of Arya and Sansa, somewhere in this viper's nest, hunted and afraid. Above him, the city was a furnace. Fires burning in the alleys, bells tolling the false king's ascent. Cersei moved swiftly, proclaiming Joffrey her rightful heir. The city watch rounded up Ned's men, executing those who resisted. Baelish, from his cell, offered deals to any who would listen, promising gold and favor. Varys drifted through the darkness, a ghost among the living, whispering of escape and vengeance, always at a price. Yet all was not lost. Arya, with Jory at her side, made her way through the maze of tunnels and cellars beneath the Red Keep. Jory bled from a wound in his shoulder, but his face was set. "Your father said to get you out. We'll do it." Arya swallowed her fear, clutching needle. She moved like a shadow, remembering all Syrio had taught her. The way to walk quiet, the way to vanish when men came looking. They found an old smuggler's door, half-rotted, and slipped into the city. Sansa, dragged before the queen, stood trembling as Cersei appraised her with cold amusement. "You will write to your brother," the queen purred, "and tell him to bend the knee, else you and your father both will die." Sansa wept, nodding, her fingers cramped around the quill. But even as she wrote, she remembered Arya's fierce eyes, her father's promise. She prayed for Robb, for Winterfell, for Bran and the old gods. In the black cells, Ned waited. Varys came to him at last, bearing water and news. "Your daughter Sansa is with the queen. Arya has escaped, we think. Jory Castle lives, and is searching for her. Robb Stark has called his banners in the north. War is coming, Lord Stark." Ned bowed his head. "If the price of my honor is my life, I will pay it. But not my daughter's. Tell the queen, tell her I will do what she asks if she lets them go." Varys studied him, sad and knowing. "The game is never so simple, my lord." In the city, Arya hid among the beggars and street rats, her hair chopped ragged, needle hidden beneath her cloak. Jory paid bribes and promised gold, always watching for the gold cloaks, the lion banners, the men who hunted wolves. Sansa endured Cersei's wrath, dreaming of snow and the godswood, praying for rescue. In the Tower of the Hand, the last of Ned's men died bravely, buying time for their lord and his daughters. Across the river, the bells tolled again and again. The sound of war, of families torn apart, of the Game of Thrones played to its bitterest end. Ned dreamed of Winterfell, of Bran beneath the heart tree, whispering warnings he had heeded too late. He saw Catelyn's face, streaked with tears. He saw Robb marching south, sword in hand, the direwolf banners unfurling. He saw Jon at the wall, staring north into the endless dark. And still, the rain fell. For days the city waited, holding its breath, the storm before the storm. Sansa wrote her letters, Arya ran and hid. Varys whispered to all sides. Jaime Lannister paced the queen's chambers, hungry for battle. Renly fled the city with his knights, disappearing into the storm. Jory and Arya moved ever closer to the city gates, one step ahead of the gold cloaks. Ned Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Hand of the King, knelt in darkness and prepared himself for the end. But the end was not yet. Word came, whispers, rumors, the clatter of hoofbeats beyond the city. Robb Stark's host marched south, banners streaming, and the River Lords joined him. The West gathered its strength. The Reach waited, cautious. The North remembered, and its vengeance would be slow and cold. Cersei summoned Ned at last, to the throne room where so many of his nightmares had begun. She wore a dress of blood-red silk, her hair a golden crown. Joffrey sat the Iron Throne, scowling and bored. "Do you confess your treason, Lord Stark?" the Queen asked, her voice sweet as poisoned wine. Ned looked at Sansa, at Arya's empty seat beside her, and felt something steel itself inside him. "I confess that I have loved my king and served him well," he said. "That I have tried to protect his children from the vipers that surround them." Cersei's smile never faltered. "And yet you stand accused of plotting to steal my son's crown." Ned stared at Joffrey. "Boy king, child of incest, creature of the queen's ambition. Your son is not the rightful heir. You know this as well as I." A gasp echoed through the hall. The court leaned forward, hungry for blood. Joffrey's face turned red. "Cut off his head, mother, now." Sir Ilan Payne approached, sword in hand, the executioner's mask grinning. Cersei raised a hand. Wait. There are terms, Stark. Say the words, bend the knee, declared Joffrey king, and your daughter may live. Sansa screamed. Arya, watching from a hidden gallery above, clutched needle, trembling. Ned looked at Sansa, at the broken men behind him, at the faces of Lannister and Baratheon and Stark. He bowed his head. I yield. I will bend the knee if you swear, by all the gods, that my daughters will be safe. Cersei's eyes flickered. Swear it, and it will be so. Ned knelt. Joffrey Baratheon is the true king. Long may he reign. The crowd roared approval. The game played to its bitter end. But in the shadows, Arya wept. Jory gripped her hand, and together they slipped from the gallery, vanishing into the city as chaos erupted below. The board was set. The pieces moved. War would come, and fire and blood with it. But the North remembered, and somewhere, far away, a boy dreamed of ravens and trees, and the future yet unwritten. Oh, hey. Down in the black cells, the stone sweated with the city's unease. Hours dripped away, unmeasured, except by the hunger in Ned's belly, and the cold that never quite faded from his bones. Rats scurried unseen. He sat on his straw and tried not to listen for the footsteps, tried not to wonder if the next set would bring death, freedom, or some new horror devised by the Queen. In the gloom he heard distant echoes, the roaring crowd, the shrieks of caged hawks, the city coming alive and collapsing on itself. Varys came and went, sliding between worlds as easily as water. The eunuch brought news. Robb Stark had crossed the neck with a host. The Riverlords were rising. Tywin Lannister was mustering in the west. Catelyn had vanished from the Eyrie. Arya was a shadow. Jory still searching. Sansa remained at the Queen's side, a trembling pawn. Varys urged patience, hope, humility, words as thin as soup. Ned stared through him, seeing only snow and the long road home. He dreamed again, and Bran was there in the Godswood, face painted with moonlight, calling out. Ravens circled the red leaves above, their eyes like beads of obsidian. The words came muffled, distant, but the sense was the same. Danger, betrayal, the bitter knowledge that the storm was not over. Ned clung to that dream, drew strength from the boy who saw what men in towers could not. One evening, footsteps stopped outside his cell. Keys rattled. Ned's hand closed to a fist on instinct. When the door opened, it was not Varys, not a jailer, but Sir Barristan Selmy, steel drawn and silent. Two men with hoods stood at his back, faces Ned did not know, but whose movements spoke of war and oaths. "My lord," Barristan said, voice low, "you must come with us, quickly, before the Lannister men return." Bedin. Ned rose stiffly, every joint groaning complaint. Barristan led him through torchlit passages, up stairwells that curved dizzyingly, past storerooms and barracks. They moved fast, the old knight limping only slightly, his breath fogging in the cool, close air. "Why?" Ned rasped, not daring to believe. Barristan glanced back, mouth a hard line. "The Queen grows bold, but she is not the only player. Renly Baratheon's men still linger. Varys plays a long game, and there are those in the city watch who remember the loyalty of Winterfell. If you stay, you die, and with you, half the North." They reached a postern, the air outside thick with mist and smoke. There, crouched beside a battered chestnut mare, was Jory Castle, his arm in a sling, eyes haunted but fierce. He gripped Arya by the shoulder, her hair hacked short, her face smudged but defiant, needle in hand. "Father!" Arya flung herself at him, and Ned's knees almost buckled as he held her. For a moment, all the weight of the world eased, the cold retreated, and he was just a father with his daughter in his arms. "We have to go now," Jory hissed. "They'll miss you by dawn." Barristan pressed a roll of parchment into Ned's hand. "This is a letter for your son, proof of the Queen's plots. Baelish's betrayal, all of it. Guard it with your life." They rode out under cover of darkness, slipping through alleyways and under archways. Jory led, keeping to the shadows, the mare picking her way through refuse and puddles. Arya clung behind Ned, shivering with relief and terror. From the docks, a fisherman waited. A grizzled man with hands like ropes, bought by the last of the Stark silver. He took them upriver, silent but for the splashing of oars. The city faded behind them, a smear of torchlight and smoke. By the time dawn split the horizon, they were gone. In the days that followed, the city howled. Cersei raged, sending gold cloaks to every gate. The bells told the king's name, and Sansa wept openly in the queen's chambers, torn by fear and guilt. Rumors ran wild. Ned Stark dead. Ned Stark fled. Arya Stark murdered in the street. Jory's name became a curse among the gold cloaks. The black cells filled with men loyal to Winterfell, men whose only crime was standing by their oaths. Joffrey's coronation was a farce of gold and velvet, the crowd cowed by the sight of Lannister steel. Ser Ilyn Payne stood behind the throne, sword unsheathed, a warning to all. Sansa knelt, numb and hollow, as Cersei's fingers dug into her shoulder. Across the river, the world moved on. Ned, Arya, and Jory rode hard for the north, keeping to the less traveled ways, fording streams, sleeping in barns and ruins. Barristan had gone his own way, vowing to meet them again if fortune allowed. Ned read the letter by firelight, its words written in Barristan's cramped hand, detailing every slight, every betrayal, every name that mattered. It was a weapon, as sharp as any blade. They passed through villages abandoned to war, fields smoldering where Lannister riders had passed. Refugees trudged south, faces blank with exhaustion, carrying what they could on broken backs. News of Robb's march was everywhere. Young Lord Stark, the Wolf of the North, crossing the Green Fork with banners streaming, the old gods at his back. One night, as they sheltered beneath a ruined sept, Arya pressed close, her voice thin in the dark. "Will we see Sansa again?" Ned wrapped her in his cloak, heart aching. "I swear it, little one. We will find her. The pack survives together, always." Jory tended his wound in silence, jaw clenched. "We'll have to move faster. There are bounties on all our heads now. The Queen won't stop." Ned nodded. "We head for River Run. The Tullys will not turn us away." They skirted the main roads, traveling by moonlight. Arya learned quickly how to hide, how to ride, how to spot danger in every face. Jory taught her to listen for the wrong kind of silence, to trust her instincts. She watched him dress his wound, learn to boil water, to mend a torn cloak, to sleep with one eye open. On the fifth night, Lannister riders found them near Harrenhal. There was no time to flee. Steel flashed. Horses screamed. Jory fought like a madman, cutting two down before he fell. Arya screamed, stabbing at a man's thigh, slipping from his grasp like water. Ned swung a broken branch, blind with fury. They escaped in the chaos, but Jory bled badly. Ned fashioned a rough stretcher, Arya helping without complaint. They moved slowly now, hiding by day, traveling only when the moon was high. Jory's fever worsened, his speech growing strange, but he pressed them onward, refusing to die on the road. At last, battered and half-starved, they reached a Tully camp. The banners of River Run flew high, and men cheered as they stumbled from the woods. Catelyn herself met them at the edge of the river, hair wind-blown, cheeks streaked with tears. "Thank the gods," she sobbed, gathering Arya to her breast. Ned embraced her, feeling at once old and reborn, a man who had come through fire and frost. Robb rode out from the main tent, armored and grim, his direwolf at his side. He took one look at Ned and fell to his knees, head bowed. "Father, I feared you lost." Ned placed a hand on his son's head, pride and sorrow mingling. "I am here. We are together. That is enough for now." Jory was carried to the healers, Catelyn tending him. Arya ate like a wolf, barely pausing for breath. Ned and Robb spoke long into the night, poring over maps, reading Barristan's letter by candlelight. "They have Sansa," Ned said, voice rough. "She is their hostage now." Robb's eyes burned. "Then we will free her. The North is risen, father. We have lords and knights, swords enough to threaten the world." The camp buzzed with rumors. Some claimed Tywin Lannister marched with 30,000. others that Renly was crowned in Highgarden. Messengers came and went, bringing tidings of battles won and lost, of towns burned, of old scores settled with fire and steel. Catelyn met with the Blackfish and the Great John, arguing for patience, for a careful strike. Arya shadowed the camp, training with the squires, learning to slip between tents unseen. Ned walked the riverbank at dusk, alone but for his thoughts. He knelt in the reeds, whispered prayers to the old gods and the new, asking for wisdom, for strength, for the safety of the children scattered by this storm. That night, the council gathered. The lords of the North and Riverlands sat beneath the stars, their breath smoking in the chill. Robb presided, but all eyes turned to Ned when he spoke. "We will march on King's Landing," he said. "We will not do it blindly. We know now the shape of the enemy. The Queen, her father, the false king. We have proof of their crimes, names and dates, confessions and secrets. We will send ravens to every corner of the realm. The truth is our sword." Menatramund. The Great John roared of approval. The Blackfish nodded, face grim. Words are wind, but sometimes the right wind will topple a castle. Robb looked to his father. "What of Sansa?" Ned's mouth tightened. "She is our greatest weakness, and their only shield. We must move swiftly, but we will not abandon her." Plans were made. Scouts sent. Banners raised. The lords swore oaths beneath the Tully Trout and the Stark Wolf. When the army moved, it was a river of iron and fury. The land trembled beneath their passing, the North and Riverlands united by outrage and loss. News of Ned's escape spread like wildfire. In every village, men took up arms. Women sharpened knives, old feuds forgotten in the face of southern treachery. In King's Landing, Cersei struck back, sending assassins, spreading rumors, offering gold for Stark heads. Sansa languished in the Red Keep, watched by Sir Mandon Moore. Her every word reported, her every movement suspect. She wrote letters, some real, some forced, each a cry for help in different ink. Arya, at River Run, chafed at the quiet. She pleaded to ride with the Outriders, to carry messages, to scout for Robb. Ned relented at last, setting her to ride with Grey Wind beside her. The men whispered that she was half-wolf herself, fearless and quick. Jory healed slowly. He drilled new recruits, his sling ever present. The memory of his fallen men burned in his eyes. As the army approached the Trident, word came. Stannis Baratheon declared for himself, raising his banners at Dragonstone. Renly rode for Storm's End, seeking allies. The realm fractured anew, every man for himself. Ned sent ravens to both Baratheon brothers, enclosing Barristan's letter, naming every Lannister plot, every treason. He begged them to unite, to remember Robert's love for them, to see the wolves as allies, not rivals. The answer was slow in coming, but in time, Stannis' reply arrived, sealed with black wax. "I will see justice done. Meet me at Storm's End. The Lion must pay for his crimes." Robb urged immediate attack, but Ned counseled caution. "Divide the Lannisters. If Stannis marches, Tywin must choose. A war on two fronts or a retreat to Casterly Rock. We will draw them out, force them into the open." On the edge of autumn, the armies met. The Green Fork ran red with blood as Stark and Lannister clashed. Robb fought with the rage of youth, Grey Wind at his side, the sword of the North bright in his hand. The Blackfish broke their flank. Jory led the charge. Arya rode as a scout, carrying messages, slipping through enemy lines unseen. The banners of House Lannister fell back at last, broken and bleeding. The road to King's Landing stood open. Robb stood in the dawn, armor dented, blood on his cheek, looking to his father for guidance. "We are close, father." Sansa, the queen. What now? Ned looked at the burning horizon, felt the cold rising from the river. "We go to King's Landing, and this time, we do not go alone. The truth, the sword, the wolf. Let them see what it means when the North remembers." The camp stirred, hope flickering at last. But the game was not done. Far away, in a tower of red stone, Sansa Stark pressed her ear to the door and listened, gathering secrets, learning to wait, her heart hardening to steel. And in the north, in the chill shadow of the Godswood, Bran dreamed again. Of ravens and wolves, of broken men rising, of a song not yet finished, and the turning of the world. K.V. The campfires of the riverlands flickered in the mist as dawn crept slow and bruised over the horizon, painting the sky in iron and ash. Ned Stark stood at the edge of the Tully encampment, listening to the river's low voice and the distant calls of waking sentries. Gray wind howled, a wolf song rising to answer the wild in the world. Arya rode back from her patrol, hair tangled and cheeks bright with cold, her eyes full of secrets and fire. Robb met her, ruffling her head and calling her sister wolf, and the two of them vanished among the tents, laughter fleeting but real. For a breath, Ned remembered the taste of joy. He could not rest, not truly, not while Sansa remained a prisoner, not while Catelyn kept her vigil at Jory's cot, praying for a fever to break, not while the world itself seemed to shudder and fracture with every raven that arrived. The war that had seemed so distant in his boyhood now pressed against him on all sides. Lannister gold, Baratheon pride, the crackling tension of ancient northern blood. On the morning after their victory at the Green Fork, the lords gathered in the great tent, the table littered with maps, wine, and the banners of the wolf and trout. The Blackfish brooded at the edge of the lamplight, his sharp face furrowed in thought, while Roose Bolton watched all with quiet, unnerving detachment. Greyjohn Umber, already drinking, bellowed approval of every plan that ended with a Lannister's head on a pike. Ned unfolded the letter from Barristan Selmy once more, reading its accusations, its names, its cold inventory of crimes and betrayals. He slid it toward the Blackfish, who read in silence, jaw working. If this reaches the right ears, the realm itself will turn, Brynden Tully said. But if it falls into the wrong hands, it will mean open war with every lion and crow in the capital. Ned nodded, weary beyond words. If there is war, let it be honest. I will not fight for shadows and lies. Roose Bolton's pale eyes met his. If we march on King's Landing, the lions will retreat behind their walls. Sieges are slow, costly. Tywin Lannister is no fool. He will not risk his house for a single girl, even a highborn hostage. Cersei may yet send Sansa north if she fears her own fall, or she may kill her out of spite, Robb muttered, fists clenched on the tabletop. I'll ride through fire to get her out, father. Just say the word. Ned laid a hand on his son's shoulder, gentling him. We are not butchers, Robb. The city is full of innocents. We must be clever as well as brave. He saw Arya lurking at the tent flap, listening. And quick. The queen will not wait forever. A rider arrived before noon, dusty and wild-eyed, carrying a Baratheon banner. He knelt before Ned, presenting a sealed missive. The wax was black, stamped with the crowned stag. Ned broke it, reading quickly. Stannis Baratheon called for all true men to Storm's End, naming Joffrey a false king and Cersei's son by incest. He promised justice for the death of Robert, alliance for those who brought evidence, and steel for any who opposed him. There was no warmth in the letter, but its promise was iron. Robb looked to Ned. Can we trust him? We can trust his hatred, Ned replied. And for now, that is enough. They rode out that night, leaving half the host with the Blackfish to hold the crossing, the rest thundering south and east beneath a moon shrouded in cloud. Ned rode with Robb and Arya, Jory when he could, and a small band of loyal men who had seen Winterfell's snows and would not turn for gold or glory. Catelyn remained with the wounded, her eyes fierce in farewell. Bring her home, she whispered as she kissed Ned's brow. They rode hard, keeping to back roads and forgotten tracks, wary of Lannister outriders and the scouts of House Frey. The night air was alive with the threat of rain, and at every stop Arya trained, moving through the forms Sirio had taught her, shadow and steel. Robb counseled with Ned by firelight, his voice more sure with each passing league. When they reached the borders of the Stormlands, the banners of House Baratheon greeted them. Black and gold, proud and numerous. They were led before Stannis at dawn, in the battered old hall of Storm's End, the walls pitted by ancient siege. Stannis himself was as stern as legend. Jaw clenched, eyes shadowed, his very presence a rebuke. He read Barristan's letter in silence, then looked up at Ned, voice cutting. If half these crimes are true, the Queen and her father are traitors. I will have them hanged, if I must burn the city to do it. I want my daughter back, Ned replied, meeting the Lord's cold stare. Nothing else matters to me. Stannis studied him, unblinking. Then let us do what is needed. I have men, ships, gold. You have the north, the riverlands, the truth. We will strike together. Cersei will break when she stands alone. Mendoza. Roose Bolton, who had ridden with them, raised a thin eyebrow. And if she does not, then we starve her, Stannis said, each word a blow. A siege, yes. But not just steel and stone. The people will know her crimes. The lords who hate her, Varys, Baelish, the Tyrells, will move when the moment is right. You, Stark, will send your proof north, east, and west. By the time winter falls, not even Casterly Rock will shelter her. Not even Casterly Rock will shelter. Robb bristled, but Ned nodded. So be it. Storm's End became a forge, hammers ringing day and night. Messengers galloped through rain and mud, bearing letters to every corner of the realm. Stannis drilled his men on the green outside, grim and tireless, while Ned plotted with his captains and sent Arya north with a handful of riders to deliver a letter to the Blackfish and rally more support. It was Arya's first true mission, and Ned saw both the child and the wolf in her as she rode out. Fear and courage at war behind her eyes. Jory rode with her, shoulder bound tight, his face a mask of purpose. Don't let her out of your sight, Ned warned. Not for a moment. A week passed. Storms lashed the coast. Ships foundered at anchor, but the plan took shape. Spies brought news. Cersei had sent for Tywin, demanding every sword he could muster. Sansa was alive, kept in the Maiden Vault, guarded by the King's Guard and a dozen gold cloaks. The city teetered, torn by hunger and the threat of war. Then, one night, as Ned bent over a map by candlelight, a voice hissed from the darkness. They are coming. Varys slipped from the shadows, robes swirling, eyes wide. The Queen means to kill the girl. She has learned of your march. The lords urge her to mercy, but she is past listening. Joffrey is a puppet. Only pain obeys. You must act, Stark. Tonight, not tomorrow. Meow. Robb cursed, reaching for his sword. Stannis stood, voice sharp. We move now. Ships are ready. If we die with swords in our hands. Ned wrote a note for Arya and Jory, praying they'd reach the river in time. Then he donned his armor, the direwolf cloak, and followed Stannis down to the ships. The wind screamed off the narrow sea, snapping banners and tearing at their cloaks as the fleet slipped from the harbor. Dozens of cogs, longships, and battered war galleys, each packed with men grim as winter. They landed south of King's Landing at dawn, the sun a sickle behind ragged clouds. The city walls rose before them, black and forbidding. The gold cloaks gathered uncertainly atop the ramparts. But Ned's men knew the city. He had sent word to those he trusted among the watch, and as Stannis' banners unfurled, half the gold cloaks threw open the gates, rushing to kneel for the true king. The fighting was fierce, but swift. Stannis led the charge, cutting down every man who stood for Joffrey. Ned fought beside him, Robb at his back, gray wind leaping among the Lannister lines. The city boiled, fire and screams, the clash of steel, the mad ringing of bells. Ned drove toward the Maiden Vault, his men cutting a path through the riot. He found Sansa at last, pale and bloodied, but alive, Ser Manton Moore dead at her feet. She fell into his arms, sobbing, and for a moment, all of the world stilled. The noise and death and madness of the city banished by the simple, desperate strength of a father's embrace. Robb and Stannis met them in the yard, their faces grave and weary. "It's not done," Stannis said, voice raw. "The queen has fled, the boy king with her. Tywin is loose, and half the lords of Westeros will not bend so easily. But we have the city," Ned answered. "We have each other." Grey wind howled. Across the city, northern banners rose beside the crowned stag. After the sack, there was blood to wash away, wounds to tend, walls to repair. Ned sent word north at once. Sansa was safe, Arya still on the road. He found Varys waiting in the throne room, watching Stannis settle into Robert's old chair, the crown heavy in his lap. "The game is not done," the eunuch murmured. "You have won a great battle, but the war will be longer, bloodier, more cunning than you know." Ned turned, feeling the old gods at his back, his children restored to him. The truth, a bright knife in his hand. "Let it come then," he said. "The North remembers." At the edge of dusk, Sansa walked the ramparts with her father, looking out over the city she once thought a shining dream. Below, pyres burned, and bells tolled a dirge for the dead. "I thought I'd never see you again," she whispered. "I prayed and prayed." He squeezed her hand. "Prayers are not always answered as we wish, but the gods are not deaf, Sansa. Nor cruel, though the world often is. Will Arya be all right?" "She's a Stark of Winterfell," Ned said, smiling faintly. "She's braver than I ever was." On the river road, Arya and Jory pressed hard for River Run, chased by rumors and shadow. They rode through villages blackened by war, past bands of outlaws and the hungry. Arya kept Needle close, sleeping with it at her side, eyes always on the horizon. They found the Blackfish at last, battered but unbeaten, rallying men for another march south. Arya handed him her father's letter, and Brynden Tully nodded. "Well done, girl. Now let's see what storms we can stir." Back in King's Landing, Ned helped Stannis settle the city. He had little taste for rule, but less for chaos. Lords came and went, some pledging fealty, others testing the wind. Varys and the council met day after day, seeking a peace none could quite believe in. The Red Keep echoed with talk of Tywin's next move, of Renly's ambitions, of dragons stirring in the Far East. But at night, the Starks sat together. Ned, Sansa, Robb, and soon Arya, cloaked in the comfort of one another's presence. They spoke of Winterfell, of Jon on the Wall, of Catelyn's courage and Jory's stubbornness. War loomed, as did winter, but for a time there was peace. In the Godswood behind the castle, Ned knelt in silent thanks. The weirwood's face watched him, ancient and calm. Its sap red as blood, its roots running deep. He felt Bran in his dreams still, a whisper on the wind, a promise that the North would not fall to shadow or fire. Across the land, the banners of House Stark fluttered in the growing wind, and men began to hope for something new. A kingdom not built on betrayal, but on truth and the quiet, stubborn love of a father for his children. And the North remembered. Aika. The light in King's Landing was different now, clearer in the wake of so much blood and storm. Soot lingered in the corners of the streets, and the smell of ash clung to stone and skin, a reminder of all that had been lost. For a time, even the noise of the city was muted. No more the high, relentless clamor of markets, but the subdued murmur of people reckoning with war. Carts rattled past with their burdens of bodies or broken brick, and the Red Keep stood high above it all, battered but unbowed. Ned walked the ramparts before dawn, breath silver in the air, gazing northward where the clouds pressed low and heavy. He thought of Catelyn, still at River Run with the wounded, her last letter trembling with hope and warning both. He thought of Jon at the wall, how the boy's quiet pride would have grown into something hard and bright if he had seen all this. He thought most of his daughters. Sansa had barely left his side since the night of her rescue, still clinging to him as if afraid he'd vanish with the morning mist. Arya, wild and hungry for the open air after so much riding and flight, had yet to see the city since slipping through the gates with the Blackfish and Jory 2 days before. Robb took to the duties of command with a haunted resolve, his face changed by battle, each new burden etched deeper than the last. He rode out each morning to patrol with the Northmen. Spoke in councils, returned exhausted but unbroken. The Starks gathered in Ned's chambers when the day was done, a ritual born of grief and necessity both. The city itself teetered between gratitude and fear. Some whispered relief that the Lannisters were gone, at least those who had not fled or died, but others remembered only the chaos and the faces of men in northern cloaks, swords drawn. Food was scarce. The gold of the crown's treasury already promised to Stannis' ships, to the new council, to the endless rebuilding. Through the streets, rumors ran faster than messengers. That Cersei had fled to Casterly Rock with her youngest son, that Tywin Lannister gathered his armies at Harrenhal, that Renly Baratheon marched from the Reach with a new queen and a host of Tyrell knights. The council chamber echoed these anxieties. Stannis sat at the head of the table, his crown plain iron and his scowl a permanent feature. Davos Seaworth stood nearby, shuffling reports, the Onion Knight's quiet voice, often the only calm in the room. Varys arrived as a matter of course, offering counsel from the shadows, and Pettyr Baelish, dragged from his cell, his face pale but his tongue still silver, was allowed to speak, though no one trusted him. It was during one such council, with rain hammering the shutters, that Sansa first asked to leave the castle. She stood in the doorway, slim and pale as milk glass, voice trembling but clear. "Father, I want to see the city." Ned saw at once the worry ripple through the council. Stannis' gaze sharpened. Robb tensed. Varys watched like a crow over a battlefield. "The city is not safe yet, little dove," Ned said gently. "It never will be," Sansa answered. "But it's ours now. I want to know it. I want to see where I am." Stannis nodded after a moment. "Surprising all. Let her go. Let them all walk the city. Let them be seen. These people need something to believe in, a reason to endure what comes next." So Sansa and Arya went out together, with Jory and 3 Northmen behind. They walked the market, where women sold what little was left: a clutch of onions, a strip of salted meat, a twist of wool. Sansa kept her head high, remembering how the queen once carried herself. Arya slouched beside her, hands in pockets, eyes everywhere. They passed a sept shattered in the fighting, where men knelt to pray for the souls of the dead, and a line of children clutching bowls at a soup line. Some recognized Sansa, her hair, her dress, the look of loss that never quite left her face. A woman curtsied, her voice rough. "Lady Stark, thank you. Thank you for ending the lion's reign." Sansa blushed, uncertain, but Arya grinned and pressed a silver stag into the woman's hand. They returned to the Red Keep in silence, hearts aching with all they had seen. That night, Sansa dreamed of snow falling on King's Landing, silent and clean. In the days that followed, Ned worked with Stannis and the council to rebuild the city's strength. Letters flew by Raven to every great house. The truth of Joffrey's birth, the witness of Barristan Selmy, the crimes of Cersei and her kin. Stannis issued proclamations from the throne, each more stern than the last. A call for unity, a warning against lawlessness, the promise of justice for all who suffered under the Lannisters. But war was coming. Scouts brought news of Tywin's host advancing along the river, 30,000 strong and bolstered by bitter men, eager for vengeance. From the Reach, Renly's banners streamed, green and gold, flowers blooming beneath the stag. The Tyrells moved in force, all but declaring a second king. Ravens from the Eyrie brought only silence, and Dorne remained a cipher, watching and waiting as it always had. Ned met with Robb and the Blackfish late at night, poring over maps by candlelight. "We cannot hold the city alone," Brynden Tully said, frowning. "We need allies, lords who will not turn at the first sight of gold or fear." Robb looked up, eyes fierce. "We have the North and the Riverlands. The North cannot march again so soon," Ned cautioned. "Our men are tired, our food is low. If Tywin comes at us here with the Tyrells at his back, the Tyrells will not strike until the lions are broken." The Blackfish interrupted. "They are clever, but they are not fools. If Stannis can hold them off." "Stannis has fewer men than either," Ned said. "We must force Tywin to split his strength." The council decided the Blackfish would ride for River Run to call every Tully bannerman still able to bear arms. Robb would command a new host, half Northmen, half Riverlords, and ride out to meet Tywin before he reached the city. Ned would remain with Stannis to secure King's Landing and negotiate with Renly, should he arrive at the gates. Before Robb left, father and son walked the ramparts. "You have changed," Ned said quietly. Robb shrugged. "We all have. I see now what you meant. All those years. About duty, about the cost of honor." Ned gripped his shoulder. "Do not let it harden you. Remember what we fight for. Not for thrones, not for pride, but for our people. For your sisters, your mother, the North." Robb nodded, fierce and young, and full of promise. The next morning, Arya insisted on riding with the scouts. Sansa stood with Ned as they watched Robb, Arya, and the Blackfish ride out in a thunder of hooves, banners snapping in the pale sun. Ned turned to his eldest daughter. "You're braver than you know, Sansa." She took his arm. "Only because you are here. Only because you still stand." King's Landing began to stir anew. The Tyrells sent envoys, first testing the winds, then arriving in force. A column of armored knights and golden-haired ladies, led by Sir Loras and the Lady Olenna, the Queen of Thorns herself. Sansa and Arya dined with them. Sansa cautious and diplomatic. Arya blunt as a blunted blade. Olenna watched them with sharp eyes, murmuring, "The North has claws, it seems. Good. The realm needs claws more than it needs pretty words." Stannis greeted the Tyrells with suspicion, but was forced by circumstance to treat. Varys orchestrated the negotiations with the skill of a cat's paw, always at the edge of the firelight. "Lady Olenna," he said one night, "do you think peace is possible, truly?" She sniffed. "Peace is for the dead, Lord Varys. We will settle for survival, and perhaps a little justice." Letters arrived from the Wall, from Jon, colder and more uncertain than before. "There are shadows beyond the Wall," Jon wrote. "Things are stirring. I fear for us all." Ned read the words in private, heart clenching. It was the same day that Arya returned with the scouts. Her face bruised, a cut above her brow. "Ambush," she spat. "But we scattered them. Tywin's men are closer than we thought. Robb means to meet them before the Trident." Ned sent word north at once, urging the Blackfish to send every man who could fight. He spent that night in the God's Wood, beneath the southern heart tree, praying for strength. He dreamed again of Bran, this time older, his voice lower, the heart tree's eyes watching. "Winter is coming, father, but you are not alone." When dawn broke, word reached the city of the battle by the Trident. Robb's host met Tywin's in a storm of steel and mud. Gray wind tore through the Lannister ranks. The Blackfish broke their left, but the cost was high. Hundreds dead, the river running red. Tywin retreated, but not far, and sent word to his daughter at Casterly Rock. "The North is wild. The South is lost. Winter is upon us all." The Tyrells, emboldened, agreed to a formal alliance. Sansa met often with Lady Olenna, learning the subtle dance of words, watching and waiting, her courage growing sharper by the day. Arya trained each morning in the yard, sparring with Northmen and Reach Knights alike, her laughter louder than her curses. Catelyn arrived at last, thin and exhausted from the road, her eyes bright as she embraced Ned, Sansa, Arya. All three at once. "The gods have not forgotten us," she whispered. "Not yet." Stannis called a great council in the Red Keep. Lords from every corner of the realm gathered, uncertain but watchful. Ned spoke for the North, Catelyn for the Riverlands, Lady Olenna for the Reach, Davos for the storm-lashed South. Stannis presided, face as hard as stone. The debate raged for hours. How to secure the city, how to treat with Dorne, how to feed the hungry and defend the walls. Petyr Baelish argued for new loans, Varys for compromise, the Blackfish for steel. In the end, it was Sansa who surprised them all, standing to speak before lords and ladies. "The North remembers," she said, voice clear. "The realm remembers. We must be better than those who ruled before. We must keep our promises, or we are nothing." There was silence, then slow, uncertain applause. The council dissolved in wary hope. Allies returned to their camps, the banners of the wolf, trout, and rose fluttering together for the first time in living memory. That night, Ned stood again in the Godswood, Catelyn beside him. The city quiet beneath a rising moon. Sansa and Arya stood nearby. Robb's raven perched on Arya's shoulder. "Whatever comes," Catelyn said softly, "we face it together." Ned nodded, feeling the old gods watching. The roots of Winterfell reaching even here. The storm was not yet over, nor the war, nor the thousand-old wounds of the realm. But in the city of ashes and hope, among the last leaves of autumn, the Starks endured. The North remembered, and waited for spring. Oh, Ka. Autumn's hush pressed heavy over King's Landing, the last warmth clinging to the stones as the leaves above the city's lanes curled into yellow and copper. Wind carried the scents of wood smoke and distant rain, and for the first time since the banners of war had streamed over the city walls, the heart of the capital beat with an uneasy, watchful peace. Yet in the Red Keep, the business of rule never ceased, and under its vaults and high windows, Ned Stark found no rest. He rose before the sun each morning, memory dragging him from shallow sleep. Sometimes, in the blue shadow of the hour before dawn, he half believed he would see the snows of Winterfell beyond his window, and the distant shapes of wolves upon the walls. Instead, he looked out over the blackened rooftops, and heard the distant clang of hammers, the echo of a city waking to the work of its own recovery. There was no end to the labor. Rebuilding had begun, but every day brought new disputes. Fishmongers arguing for coin to mend their boats, stonemasons bickering with armorers over who needed iron more, septons begging for bread for the growing orphan host. Ned met with each, offering what justice and patience he could. His northern calm steadied the council, though Stannis still wore his discontent like a breastplate. A city ruled by wolves and stags, Stannis would mutter to Davos, is a city doomed to indecision. Yet for all his complaints, the king ruled with a sense of honor that reminded Ned of Robert, in the early years, a man driven more by duty than appetite. The two men, so different in spirit, found an odd respect growing between them. Born of late nights, poring over maps, and balancing the endless ledgers of war. With every day that passed, rumors grew thicker than the crows at the city gates. Tywin Lannister's host, checked but undefeated, waited along the Blackwater, fortifying Harrenhal and burning villages that did not pay the lion's price. Ravens flew from Casterly Rock, each bearing demands and veiled threats. In the Reach, Renly gathered more men and sent honeyed words to any lord willing to ride beneath his stag and rose banners. From the Eyrie, Lysa Arryn sent only silence. Dorne watched, neither friend nor foe, its red sun and spear banners still unmoved. The most persistent whispers, however, were of Daenerys Targaryen, a dragon queen across the sea. Her name spoken only in shadows. Varys brought news of sellsword companies on the move, of riders with silver hair seen in Korth and Volantis, of ships bought with gold from unknown hands. Ned listened, weighed the threat, and ordered more ravens sent to the north and east. "The realm is brittle as thin ice," he told Stannis after one such report. "Even a rumor of dragons could shatter what little peace we have." Arya meanwhile adapted to city life as only she could. She wore breeches, trained with the Northmen in the yard, and slipped out often with Jory, returning dirty and grinning, her purse lighter for her coin's work among the city's hungry. She taught Sansa how to braid her hair the northern way again, how to move through crowds with eyes up and shoulders squared, and how to curse in 6 different dialects. Sansa bore it with grace, though some nights her eyes found Ned's, and she would say softly, "I miss home." He would nod, and in that silent understanding the last of her girlhood slipped away. Catelyn remained a comfort in these troubled days. She managed the household, soothed old wounds, and helped the northern ladies now living as exiles in the capital. She read the letters from Robb, who remained camped north of the Trident with the Blackfish and Great John, harrying Lannister supply lines, waiting for the right moment to move, and sent back words of pride and warning both. When the snows finally came, Sansa was the first to see them. She woke early, saw the flakes spinning down from a cold sky, and called her family to the windows. Arya laughed aloud, chasing flakes with her tongue, and even Catelyn wiped away a tear. The city woke to a world gone white, an omen to the small folk, a blessing or a curse depending on who told it. Ned took the snow as a sign, a reminder that time ran short. "Winter is here," he told Stannis, looking at the drift already gathering in the yards. "The North will not wait forever. If Tywin does not attack, hunger will." Bender. Stannis called a war council that same day. The lords assembled in the great hall, the windows thick with frost. The Blackfish arrived with tidings of Robb's success. Another Lannister train broken, the gold stripped and scattered. Tywin's vanguard harried into retreat. The Tyrells sent Sir Loras, who brought offers of grain and men but pressed, subtly, for greater say in the city's rule. Lady Olenna herself arrived soon after, cutting through courtiers and counselors alike, her tongue sharp as a sword. Sansa was often at Olenna's side, learning the arts of diplomacy and deception, the language of courts as well as the North's old honesty. The Queen of Thorns took to her with real affection, saying, "The best flowers bloom wild, not in hothouses, child. Remember that." Then Arya, restless, volunteered for courier rides north, dispatches for Robb, secret letters for the Blackfish. She returned with tales of fording rivers in the dark, of evading Lannister scouts, of cold nights and quick horses, and the thrill of belonging to something fierce and dangerous. One evening, Ned found his daughters in the Godswood, the southern heart trees, red leaves bright against the snow. Arya sat high in the branches, boots swinging, while Sansa traced the carved faces lines with a gloved finger. "Do you think Bran is dreaming of us?" Sansa asked. "I think Bran is always with us somehow," Arya called down. Ned's throat tightened at the mention of his second son. "So far away." "He's watching," Ned said softly. "The gods see more than we know. The wolves remember." Then, oh. The next morning, ravens brought news that Tywin Lannister had at last abandoned Harrenhal, marching south with the remains of his army, burning as he went. Renly, emboldened by Tyrell grain and gold, moved to seize the Riverlands. War, which had threatened at the city's edge for months, now circled again with new hunger. The people of King's Landing felt the change at once. Food grew scarce, tempers sharper. Men who had cheered the end of Lannister rule now cursed the new council for every empty belly. Sansa rode with Olenna and Arya among the markets, seeing firsthand the costs of peace so dearly won. The city watch doubled its patrols, but every night brought new fires, new brawls, new wounds. Ned met daily with Davos and Stannis, with Maester Cresson and the lords of the council. Plans were laid for defense, alliances written and rewritten. Ned's letters to Robb grew more urgent. "Move swiftly. The city cannot withstand another siege." Robb's reply was equally stark. "The North will march. Tell the king to ready his banners." The first true snowstorm came with Tywin's advance, the white swirling over the camps and fields as if to hide the armies from the gods themselves. Ned stood on the walls, watching the black lines of Lannister soldiers moving through the snow, banners tattered, the lion's gold dulled by cold and defeat. With them came survivors from the west, refugees and broken men, dragging their stories and grievances into the heart of the city. On the eve of battle, Ned walked the Godswood with Catelyn. The snow muffled their steps, the only sound a slow drip of ice from the branches. "Do you regret coming south?" she asked, voice low. Ned looked at her, seeing the lines the years had drawn, the fierce love still burning in her eyes. "I regret nothing but the pain our children have endured. But here, together, we have a chance to change the world." She leaned into him, eyes bright with tears. "Let's live long enough to see that chance come." The next day, the siege began. Tywin's host encircled the city, its camps red with banners, the winter sky torn by smoke. But the Northmen arrived at their back, Robb's banners flying high, gray wind howling a challenge from the vanguard. The city shook with the clash of arms, arrows falling in sheets, the thunder of hooves, and the crash of shield walls. The Tyrells moved at last, their green banners swooping to the field in a rush of cavalry and steel. Inside the city, Sansa tended the wounded with Catelyn and Maester Cresson. Arya ran messages to the walls, climbed to the highest towers to watch the battles, her heart soaring with every cry of victory, breaking with every loss. The bells rang for each dead lord, for each burned granary, for every turn of the fortune's wheel. Ned rode out with Robb when the main gate finally broke, their army sweeping through the Lannister rear, in a blizzard of snow and steel. Tywin's forces broke and ran, fleeing toward the river, the last of the Lion's banners swallowed by the storm. Robb, the Blackfish, and the Great Jon led the charge. Gray wind tore at the heels of fleeing knights. When the carnage ended, Tywin himself was gone. Fled west, his power broken but not destroyed. King's Landing opened its gates to the returning host. The city cheered as Robb, Ned, and their battered army passed through. The wolf banners mingled with the crowned stag, and the Tyrell rose. In the aftermath, the council gathered in the throne room, Stannis seated in Robert's old chair, Robb at Ned's side, Olenna and her kin beside Davos and the Blackfish. There were new arguments, of course. How to divide the spoils, how to mend the broken walls, what justice to offer the realm. But the old bitterness was softened by victory, by the memory of what had been risked and what had been saved. In the quiet that followed, Ned brought his children to the Godswood. Snow drifted over Sansa's red hair, dusted Arya's dark lashes, and for a moment, even Robb looked young again, his burdens set aside. Catelyn watched them all, her eyes shining. "We did not come here for crowns or gold," Ned said, voice carrying through the hush. "We came for each other. Let the realm remember that." As the moon rose over the city, the bells rang not for war, but for hope. The wolf and the rose, the trout and the stag. 4 banners on a single wind. The city, battered but living, looked toward spring at last. And somewhere far to the north, beneath a sky alive with stars, Bran Stark dreamed of green fields, of flying, of the voices of his kin carried far on the wind. In every dream the pack was whole, and the north remembered. Ka. Winter's grip tightened over King's Landing, lending a chill even the braziers in the halls of the Red Keep could not entirely banish. The city, that had once seemed immune to the changing of the seasons, now yielded. Rooftops swept in white, the muddy streets frozen solid in the morning, cold seeping through every stone and bone. In the great hall, tapestries fluttered in unseen drafts, and the voices of lords and ladies rose and fell with each new crisis. But outside, hope lingered like smoke after a hearth fire, fragile, sweet, and uncertain. Ned Stark moved through the days like a man with twin hearts. One north, always with Robb and the banners of Winterfell. The other here, beating in time with every fresh demand the city pressed on him. Every hour, new petitions arrived. Cries for food, for justice, for gold, for mercy. He met each one with quiet purpose. Sometimes patience, sometimes a steel that surprised those who mistook his calm for softness. The wolf ran deep in his blood, and now all could see it. Even Stannis, for all his iron will, had come to respect the grim resolve of Winterfell's lord. But the city, for all its slow recovery, stood poised on the edge of change. Now that Tywin Lannister's army had been broken and fled, new dangers gathered. Wild rumors flew of Tywin fortifying Casterly Rock, hiring sellswards, seeking old debts in the west. Across the Reach, Renly's banners were joined by the golden roses of House Tyrell, and Olenna's counsel only grew sharper as her family's strength swelled. In the south, Dorne's Prince Doran sent careful messages, offers of trade, vague pledges of friendship, and veiled warnings not to be drawn into a northern war. Above all, the city itself was restless. The cold brought hunger and illness. The poorest neighborhoods teemed with the sick and starving. Each day, Sansa and Arya left the keep with Catelyn, distributing bread and blankets, learning the art of mending wounds and calming fears. Sansa's voice, once frail, now carried weight in the markets. Arya's fierce glare sent city boys scrambling when they threatened the weak. The small folk whispered that the wolves cared more than any lion or stag. Catelyn, for her part, was everywhere. She tended wounded soldiers, soothed the fears of noble women, worked with Davos and Maester Cresson to secure shipments of grain from the Tyrells. She wrote daily to Robb, urging him to hold the trident and not press south while the snows held. In quiet moments, she and Ned would sit by the fire in the solar, holding hands in silence, each drawing strength from the other. Robb sent ravens every week. The North is restless, father. Our people are proud. But there is hunger in the hills, and the rivers freeze before our eyes. The Blackfish watches the passes. I ride the lines each dawn, praying winter eases before blood must run again. Ned read each letter to his daughters, seeing the pride in Arya's wild eyes and the longing in Sansa's gentle gaze. As the moons turned, King's Landing slowly mended. The Tyrells sent food and healers, their green banners standing in the snows beside the wolf and trout. Lady Olenna's laughter rang through the halls, sly as any fox. Sansa became her shadow at council, learning to navigate both words and silences. Arya shadowed the Blackfish and Jory Castle, riding on patrol, learning to wield bow and blade with increasing skill. More than once she returned with bruises and laughter both, leaving the men in awe of her spirit. Stannis Baratheon ruled with a firm hand, often clashing with the city's guilds and the faith. Yet he honored his promises. Petyr Baelish was exiled to the Fingers, his fortunes seized and divided among the poor, and Varys remained, always in shadow, always listening, often appearing with a helpful rumor or warning just when it was needed most. One evening, as the sun set blood-red beyond the snowbound rooftops, a ship arrived in Blackwater Bay. Its sails were white and silver, bearing a sigil none in the city recognized. Three-headed dragon, crimson on black. Word raced to the Red Keep, and that night, Ned and Stannis met in the solar with Davos, Catelyn, and Lady Olenna. Varys bowed, eyes shining with something almost like awe. It seems the whispers were true, my lords. The last of the Targaryens has crossed the narrow sea. Daenerys Stormborn rides for Pentos with dragons at her back. The world is changing again. Stannis' face was thunder. Let her come. I will meet her at the gates, sword in hand. But Olenna only smiled, fingers drumming. Or perhaps we invite her to the table instead. Fire and ice both have their place in the world. Ned sat in silence, heart pounding. The ghosts of old wars pressed close. Mad king? Dead princes? Secrets too old for light. He remembered Bran's dreams, the warnings whispered through leaves and wind. The pack survives, he thought, but the world does not wait. Days passed, each one heavier. Snow buried the city in silence. The new council, Stannis, Ned, Davos, Catelyn, Olenna, the Blackfish, Maester Cresson, argued into the long hours of each night, debating what to do if the dragons truly came. Sansa listened and learned. Arya slipped out into the city, eavesdropping on sellswords and sailors, bringing back word of distant ships, sullen Westerland's exiles, and whispers of gold changing hands in the dark. And all the while, ravens flew. One cold morning, a bird arrived from the wall. Jon's hand had grown surer. His writing spoke of wildlings stirring, of great shapes glimpsed in the snow, of wolves running beyond the haunted forest. The wall is holding, but the wild is restless. I dream of Bran, father. Tell Arya I remember our snow battles. Tell Sansa the Godswood is white as her song. The news was read aloud in the great hall, and Sansa's smile was bright as sunrise. Arya's pride, fierce as any wolf. Soon after, the Blackfish returned from the Trident with tidings. Robb's host had outlasted the worst of the snows and held the line. "The West is starving, Lord Stark," Brynden said. "If Tywin strikes, he'll do so out of desperation." The council prepared. Grain was hoarded, arms mended, every man and woman trained for siege or flight. Still, the city's pulse remained hopeful. Sansa and Arya, with Catelyn, opened a keep to the small folk each week, holding a winter feast on the Godswood's snow-dusted stones. For a time, laughter returned to King's Landing. Children running with wooden swords, the old and young alike singing the songs of the North. In the quiet after one such feast, Ned found Arya and Sansa in the Godswood, the moonlight falling silver over their faces. "Do you think the Dragon Queen will come?" Sansa asked, voice trembling with the possibility of myth. Arya grinned, fierce and wild. "Let her. I'd like to see a dragon. Maybe I'd ride one if she lets me." Ned knelt beside them, drawing both close. "Whatever comes, we face it as a pack. Do you hear me? The wolves of Winterfell, always together." The days grew longer. The first thaw crept into the city, and the scent of river mud returned, heavy and wet. With the changing season came more ravens. Tywin's scouts reported. Tyrell grain ships docked. Renly's envoys whispered of alliances. Catelyn rode often to River Run, working to heal old wounds. Olenna counseled patience. Stannis, action. The day finally came when the dragons arrived. 3, black and green and gold, circling high above the bay, their shadows falling over the walls as Daenerys Targaryen herself rode through the gates. The city poured out to see her, to gawk and cheer and fear in equal measure. In the throne room, Stannis received her. Ned stood at his right hand, Sansa and Arya with their mother and the Blackfish. The Dragon Queen, young and proud, entered flanked by Unsullied, her hair silver and her eyes bright as amethysts. The hall fell silent as she knelt before the king, and Stannis spoke. "You come as conqueror, or as guest?" "As guest," Daenerys answered. "For now." Olenna leaned forward murmuring. "Now the realm is truly changed." That night, the Starks dined together as the bells rang in the cold air, and dragons curled on the towers above. Sansa's laughter filled the room. Arya told stories of battles and escapes, and Catelyn and Ned watched their children, hope swelling in their chests. For a moment, there was peace. A peace not born of surrender, but of hard-won trust and unity. Winter was not over, and war would come again, but in the heart of the city, the wolves endured. In dreams, Bran walked beneath strange stars, watching the pack from afar, whispering through leaves and snow. Together, always. And so the North remembered, and the world turned anew. "Oh, unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 9442,029, A Ford 72 Dine. A. A hush settled on King's Landing in the days after Daenerys Targaryen's arrival. An expectant silence as if the city itself was holding its breath. The dragons roosted atop the ruined spires of Maegor's Holdfast, their shadows sliding across the rooftops at dawn and dusk. Rumors swept through the streets like autumn leaves. Some said the silver-haired queen would burn the Red Keep and take the Iron Throne for herself. Others swore she'd come to marry the Baratheon king and make peace at last. Yet in the Red Keep, amid a council more divided than ever, Ned Stark found little time for rumor or rest. Stannis Baratheon called council every morning. His voice, hard as the cold iron of his crown, echoed through the solar as he debated with Daenerys, with Lady Olenna and her clever-eyed Tyrells, with Davos Seaworth, Catelyn Stark, Maester Cresson, and always Ned. The table groaned with maps and ledgers and letters from every lord in the realm. Daenerys spoke in the soft, unyielding tone of those who had walked fire and come through. Changed. Stannis answered every offer with suspicion, every threat with a promise of war. The lords of the Reach and Riverlands circled like hawks, their banners mingling uneasily in the square outside. Ned watched the young queen carefully. He saw in her the steel of a Targaryen, but also the patience of exile. a strange humility that made her presence even more unsettling. She spoke often of peace, of justice for the realm, food for the hungry, an end to the cycle of fire and blood. But there was something ancient behind her eyes, a knowledge that came from loss and loneliness. When she spoke of her dragons, it was as if she was speaking of kin. Arya was the first of the Stark children to seek her out, slipping through the Red Keep's winding halls with needle at her hip. She watched Daenerys feed the dragons, her eyes shining with awe. The queen laughed at Arya's boldness, inviting her to touch the warm black scales of Drogon, to feel the furnace breath beneath. Arya returned to her family wild with stories, her dreams now filled with dragons as well as wolves. Sansa, more cautious, watched Daenerys from afar. Yet soon even she was swept into the queen's orbit, drawn by the tales of her exile, her suffering, her resolve. The two sat together in the gardens one bright afternoon. Sansa's voice quiet as she asked about faraway places, about brothers lost and found, about what it meant to be a queen who'd never wished for a crown. "We do not choose our battles sometimes," Daenerys said, "but we choose how we fight them." For all these moments of peace, the city braced for storm. Word came that Tywin Lannister had sent envoys to Braavos and Lys, buying swords. In Dorne, the Martells still waited, watching the north and south bleed each other dry. In the Riverlands, skirmishes flared along the fords and woods. The Reach was a garden of intrigue, every house weighing the roses and wolves, the stags and dragons, against the promise of gold and safety. One morning, Maester Cresson placed before the council a letter sealed with the Lion of Lannister. Ned broke the wax, reading aloud Tywin's demands: restoration of his lands and titles, the return of all Lannisters held prisoner, and the exile of Daenerys and her beasts, or war would come again, fiercer than before. Stannis' hand clenched to a fist. "Let him come," he growled. "We broke him once. We'll break him again." Daenerys only smiled, the ghost of her ancestors flickering in her eyes. "If he comes, he will find fire waiting." That night, Ned walked the Godswood with Catelyn, the snow soft underfoot, the trees casting long blue shadows. "Do you trust her?" Catelyn asked. "The Dragon Queen?" Ned considered long before answering. "She is young, and fierce, and wise beyond her years. She would not have survived otherwise. But she is a Targaryen. There is fire in her blood, and fire is hard to hold." Catelyn nodded. "I see Sansa in her sometimes. A girl who wished for songs and found herself alone in the ashes." "She is not alone now," Ned said, and pulled his wife close. "Nor is Sansa. Nor are any of us, not while the pack holds." The next day brought chaos to the city. A fire broke out near the Dragon Pit, a pyre of grain stores, set alight by unknown hands. Amid the smoke and confusion, a band of sellswords tried to break into the Red Keep, blades drawn for Daenerys. Arya was the first to sound the alarm, fighting her way through the kitchens and halls with two of her northern guards. Robb and Jory rushed to seal the gates. Sansa and Lady Olenna led the women and children to safety in the deepest cellars. Sir Loras and his Tyrell knights holding the passages. Drogon roared, a sound like a storm breaking over the city, and Daenerys emerged onto the ramparts, the great dragon coiled behind her. Fire streaked the sky, the sellswords scattering in terror. Northmen and Reachmen joined in the rout, and when the smoke cleared, half the attackers lay dead, and the rest vanished into the alleys of Flea Bottom. That night, the council gathered in the throne room. Ned stood before the Iron Throne, his family at his side. Stannis sat the seat, grim and battle-worn, Daenerys at his right, a reminder that even in victory, danger was never far. Lady Olenna fixed the council with her keen gaze. "We have enemies within and without. There will be more fire, more blood, unless we make a peace the realm can believe in." Stannis looked to Daenerys. "You came as guest. Will you remain as ally?" Daenerys answered with the calm of one who had survived many storms. "I did not cross the sea for conquest alone. I wish to see the realm healed, the great houses united, the common folk fed and safe." If I can help build such a peace, I will do so. Then? Olenna nodded. Then we must give the people something more than old banners and older grudges. So it was that in the chill months that followed, a pact was forged. One that bound the North, the Reach, the Riverlands, and Dragonstone together, with Daenerys named Lady Protector of the East, and a seat at the King's Council. Grain from the Reach filled the city's empty bellies, and Dothraki riders joined the patrols beyond the city gates. Northmen and Tyrell men repaired walls side by side. Sansa, now Lady of Winterfell in all but name, became a bridge between Queen and Queen of Thorns, her voice strong in every council. Arya rode the city and the river, keeping the peace, her legend growing, with each tale told in market and barracks. Robb returned at last, his army camped beyond the walls, the young wolf hailed as hero by the smallfolk. The Blackfish oversaw the training of new recruits, shaping city boys into soldiers for the realm's defense. Catelyn managed the household with a steady hand, keeping the lords in line, the hungry fed, and the houses of the city open for the North's exiles and the wounded of every house. As spring crept across the land, the realm began to hope again. Rumors of Tywin's new host haunted the western horizon, and word came that the Martells might yet march. But for the first time in many years, there was laughter in the streets, songs in the taverns, banners flying for something greater than a single house. One clear morning, Ned found himself in the Godswood, Bran's face whispering from the bark, the quiet deeper than words. He thought of the journey that had brought them here, the choices, the losses, the warnings of a dreaming child in the north. He heard the city waking beyond the walls, the distant cry of a dragon, the laughter of his daughters, the hope in his wife's voice. He knelt beneath the heart tree, speaking a prayer for peace, for wisdom, for the strength to hold what had been won. When he rose, the wind carried with it the scent of grass and new blossoms, and he knew the worst of winter had passed. The council met one final time before Robb and Daenerys set out to treat with the Martells. Stannis raised his cup, a rare smile touching his lips. Let us remember this day when wolves and stags and dragons stood together and the realm endured. Daenerys, radiant in the sunlight, echoed him. Let us remember. Let us be worthy of the peace we have paid for. Then now, sir. Sansa squeezed Arya's hand. Catelyn smiled at her husband. And outside, the city cheered as the banners rose. Wolf and stag, rose and dragon, streaming together on the first true wind of spring. High above, 3 dragons wheeled and soared, their shadows sweeping over the city as the world turned again. In every house, from the highest tower to the humblest hovel, the people watched and remembered. For the first time in a generation, there was hope. And in the north, Bran's dreams were full of green grass and warm sun, the pack whole and the land at peace. The world endured. The north remembered. And so did all those who held to love and to honor, even in the turning of the greatest storms. The air above King's Landing shimmered with spring's promise, the snow finally receding to reveal sodden streets and scorched gardens where the city's children chased each other, laughter ringing over rubble and roots. The dragons had gone to the high towers, curling in the last beams of morning light, their scales warming beneath a gentler sun. Along the docks, ships from Old Town and Gulltown unloaded grain, barrels of Reach cider, and bales of bright green wool, living proof that the pact, won by counsel and blood, was healing the city's wounds. Ned Stark rose at dawn, his dreams still echoing with visions of wolves running through the snows of Winterfell, of Catelyn's hand in his, of Bran's distant voice whispering through the heart tree's leaves. Yet each morning reality returned. Stone beneath his feet, the bustle of the Red Keep, the anxious faces of the people and the slow, halting rebirth of peace. The days took on new rhythm. Sansa and Arya left the castle early, Arya in a battered tunic, her hair wind-mussed, Sansa with her cloak pulled close, Lady Olenna at her elbow. They met with the women of the city, bakers, healers, washerwomen, learning names, hearing grievances, making promises that would be remembered long after the banners faded. Arya laughed with the butcher's boy who'd lost 2 fingers to frostbite. Sansa held the hand of a newborn, her voice soothing in the cool light. Robb returned each evening from patrols beyond the walls, boots muddy, cheeks reddened, gray wind trailing at his side with a jaw full of rabbit or a bloodied deer. In council, Robb was grave and restless by turns, his jaw set as he listened to disputes among the riverlords, the Tyrell envoys, the newly empowered city guilds. The Blackfish sat beside him, sharp-eyed, often silent, his fingers always drumming the table when Tyrell or Targaryen envoys pressed their claims too hard. Spring festivals began in the lower city. The first day of clear weather brought out children dressed as wolves and stags, as roses and dragons, capering around fires built atop the ruins of what had burned. Sansa insisted on opening the Red Keep's granaries for the festival, and for 3 days, the city feasted, on stews thick with barley, on pies crammed with the last of winter's apples, on Reach cheeses and Dornish dates. Catelyn and Maester Crescent presided over the tables in the Great Hall, laughing as Sansa poured ale for the Tyrell and Northmen alike. Lady Olenna watched the proceedings with sly satisfaction, murmuring to Ned as the fire crackled, "If they eat together, Lord Stark, they may not stab each other? At least not tonight." Ned smiled, knowing well that peace was often only as strong as the meal on the table. News from the north was mixed. The winter had finally loosened its hold, but the people had paid dearly. Robb's letters spoke of villages rebuilt, of sons returned from war, of long feuds ended around spring bonfires. Bran, still at Winterfell with Hodor and Old Nan, wrote of the greening woods and the first wolf pups of the season, and of dreams full of crows and broken towers, of shadows stirring at the edge of the world. Ned read those letters alone, his fingers trembling, his heart pulled ever north. In the south, the Queen of Thorns bartered a treaty with the Martells, sending Sansa and Robb to treat with Prince Doran's envoys at the river market. Sansa, now famed for her calm and wisdom, listened to each side before she spoke, weighing Martell pride against Tyrell ambition, always with an eye to the hungry city beyond the walls. Arya meanwhile rode out with the Dothraki and northern outriders, learning the old wild ways of tracking and reading the land, returning covered in dust and new scars. Daenerys Targaryen met often with Ned and Stannis, her dragons growing ever bolder, her presence settling in the city like another season. She was a storm contained by will and purpose, her words fierce but measured, her visions of the future now woven with the fate of Westeros itself. She rode her dragons only in the early dawn or late dusk, never over the city, always over the sea or the wild, giving the people both awe and reassurance. One evening, as the last rays faded over Blackwater Bay, Ned joined Daenerys on the battlements, watching the fires in the city below. "You have given them hope," Ned said quietly. "But hope is a fragile thing." Daenerys smiled, her hair bright as moonlight. "So is a dragon's egg. Yet from such things, the world changes." "They fear you," Ned continued, watching her face. "But they trust you too. You have kept your word." She turned, her eyes old and bright. "And you, Lord Stark, do you trust me?" Ned's answer was measured. "You have not broken faith. You seek peace, not just your own glory. That is more than I dared hope when you first arrived." She nodded, thoughtful. "Peace cannot last forever. Not in this world. But if we can give them a generation, that is enough." Mendwand. On the following morning, ravens brought word of Tywin Lannister at Casterly Rock, ill and growing weaker. Rumors swirled of infighting among the Lannister bannermen, of gold lost to pirates and sellswords in the Stepstones, of desperate marriages and midnight treaties. Stannis and Ned shared the news with the council. "If Tywin falls, the West will not rise again so soon," Stannis observed. But Catelyn cautioned, "The lion's cubs are hungry, and the lioness is not one to mourn quietly." The council planned for every contingency. The Tyrells pledged more food, more knights. The Martells agreed to open the Boneway to trade, sending barrels of salt and citrus and black wine. Sansa pressed for an orphanage in the city. Arya and Jory drilled the Watch and the city boys, making friends and rivals with every bout. The days passed. The city's wounds knit slowly, walls repaired, new trees planted in the scorched gardens, Northmen and Southron alike laboring side by side. At night, the Starks gathered in Ned's chambers, the fire crackling, Catelyn at his side, their daughters close, Robb and the Blackfish often arguing over maps and old songs. They laughed, remembering Winterfell, recalling bannermen long dead and feasts now gone. One night, as a gentle rain fell, Bran's raven arrived, black wings in the torchlight. His message was simple, written in a firm hand. The North is safe. The Godswood blooms. The pack endures. Ned read the words aloud, his voice thick. Sansa wept openly. Arya grinned. Robb squeezed his father's shoulder, and Catelyn pressed her lips to Ned's brow. The city seemed to breathe, to settle into its new shape. A place remade by hardship, tied together by oaths stronger than banners. Daenerys remained, her dragons never far. Her counsel sought at every turn. The small folk whispered of a time when kings and queens would rule together, not as enemies, but as family, at least for a time. In the early hours, Arya slipped into the Godswood, needle at her side, finding Sansa already waiting. Her face lifted to the moon. They spoke softly, of dreams and fears, of lost brothers and new hopes, of what it meant to be a Stark in a world changed. If Bran can dream a pack whole, Sansa whispered, maybe it can be true. Arya touched her hand, rough and calloused. It already is. Dawn broke over King's Landing, gilding the banners that now hung in the breeze. Wolf, stag, rose, dragon, and trout, the colors running together like the rivers of spring. The bells rang, not for war or death, but for another day begun, another day survived. Ned stood at the window of the council chamber, the wind cool on his face. He saw Sansa and Arya among the people, Catelyn tending a wounded boy, Robb laughing with Jory, Daenerys above on Dragonback, her shadow passing like a blessing over the streets. He closed his eyes, breathing deep of the scent of spring, of hope, of the North remembered. This was not the world he had been born to, nor the one he'd dreamed for his children. But it was the world they had made together, the price paid in blood and sorrow, the promise of peace not yet broken. And so, for a while, the wolves ran free beneath a sky washed clean, their hearts unbroken, their dreams carried far on the wind, and the city, reborn in fire, tempered by winter, stood strong beneath the banners of a new age.